In this session, I'll be discussing other major concepts in Marxism, basically commodity fetishism, commodity reification, and ideological state apparatus. So starting with commodity fetishism. When Marx used this word fetishism, what does he mean? When people usually hear this word fetish, we jump into this sexual connotation of the word. But Marx is not talking about that physical attraction, that unsettling human attraction to commodities. Here he is using this word from the older version of fetish. Back in the days of colonialism, fetish was popularized as a term which was used to describe inanimate objects that possessed fantastical or mysterious power in indigenous cultures, in all those native cultures. So, and we should also see that Marx's understanding of fetishism is secular, not at all religious, not at all attached, connected with religion. Nevertheless, the central idea remains the same. Marx tries to say that commodity exists in a contradictory dual state. One, that it is physical and it is in every way tangible. It is physical and tangible. And another, that it sits at the heart of social material relations. We would expect social relations in society to be set and changed by people themselves. After all, we know that without people there cannot be a society. And yet, we will see how in capitalism something as complex as social relations is defined not by people but by inanimate objects. In capitalism, social relations are not defined by people but by inanimate objects, and that essentially is known as commodity fetishism. For example, when you buy a t-shirt from a shop, you know that we can describe it physically. For example, we may observe a shirt and point out that it is made out of cotton and that it has a bit of polyester. You will understand it from the tag. And we know that this shirt is generally for wearing on our upper bodies. But we never think about the creation of this shirt. We know what's the use, but we are completely unaware about the creation of this shirt. So the creation of this shirt required, as you see in this picture, required the employment of first of all, you have a cotton picker who has this machine, who has this assistance of a machine, or he uses his foot and he collects this raw cotton, and there is this machine to process this raw cotton, and then there is a person to stitch it all together as a shirt. And basically it created or renewed social relations like those between factory owner and the worker, or there may be owner of this industry company and the truck driver, and there is even this social relations between you and the buyer and all the producers whose names and identities you probably do not and cannot know. And that is the biggest reveal. It is called commodity fetishism. That commodity possesses a mysterious ability to create or renew social relations while at the same time being something as ordinary or as simple as a white cotton t-shirt. Marx says that the definite social relations between men themselves take on this fantastic form, take this mysterious form of a relation between things. So, to understand this, we will again go back to this t-shirt. The reason why we can't see or know when and by whom this t-shirt was made is because this labor in the capitalist system happens privately. Commodities are made in the factory or on the farm or in other privately owned places. And they mean nothing until they are taken to this market for exchange. So private labor becomes social at the point of exchange. And here too, it is not the interaction between individuals happening. There too, it is only interaction of commodities. For example, in our case, when you buy that t-shirt, it is not interaction between individuals happening, it is interaction of commodities. Here, when you buy that t-shirt, it is the interaction between the money in your purse, which by the way is nothing more than the price of the value of that t-shirt. So this sounds really odd, but this is actually what is really happening. And Marx called it commodity fetishism for a reason. The exchange happening in that store is surely not between you and the t-shirt maker or the cotton picker. You don't even know who that person might be. You will never know who that person might be. As I said earlier, this is the mysterious power of commodity fetishism. It hides the origins of private labor through the mask of the relations of commodities. A world whose social relations exist between things and not people is one in which people live their lives under the influence of the systemic forces. If commodities define social relations in capitalism, then in reality it means that neither the capitalist nor the worker have any part to play. So it ultimately results in what is known as alienation. So this is the concept commodity fetishism. Commodity acquiring a mysterious nature, a fantastic power, which hides this private labor through the mask of relations of commodities. Now we come to the next concept, that is reification. George Lukács of Frankfurt School introduced this concept of reification, and we followed the Marxian concepts of alienation and commodity fetishism. So reification is when you think of or treat something abstract as a physical thing. The act or the result of the act of transforming human properties and relations and actions into properties. And relation and actions of man produce things which becomes independent of man and start governing his life. And reification is a process peculiar to capitalist system. As I said earlier, Lukács' argument for reification draws generally from Marx's concept of how commodities are exchanged and what kind of repercussions this system of exchange has on society as a whole. And Lukács points out that the question of reification becomes pertinent, becomes important in a system where the commodity form is the universal structural principle. Whereas in earlier systems, commodity was only one of the forms which regulated the metabolism of human society. But in capitalist society, commodity becomes the universal structural principle. And it is this capitalist mode of production that introduces this systematization of commodity production and exchange. This universalizing process actually requires this establishment of new norms and methods that actually completely overrides the ways of the earlier systems, where commodity was only one of the forms. Here, in the system, in capitalist mode of production, commodity form has become dominant, not only as a system based on strict standardization and quantification, and it inherently alters the nature of human labor. Here, in relation to his work, man doesn't appear as the authentic master of the process. This is what Lacan says about the status of individual under this new system, that there is this fragmentation happening. This fragmentation of the object of production necessarily results in the fragmentation of its subject. So here, human beings becomes just a mechanical part incorporated into a mechanical system. This mechanization destroys the organic interpersonal bonds in society, creating all those atomized individuals. And this dying out of this natural, organic, and the systematization of this automatic and mechanic is what is known as reification, according to Lukács. So, reification ultimately produces and reproduces the whole mechanical system. And every reproduction solidifies that status quo as a natural reality. As I said earlier, human beings become just codes in a machine. We are being moved by forces alien to us. And this is a process which results in reification. So, this is the concept reification. Now we will move to the next concept by Althusser, that is ideological state apparatus. Here, this thinker, French Marxist thinker, expanded, Louis Althusser expanded his ideas on ideological state apparatus based on Marx's writings and concepts. And here, he tries to explain the prevalence and sustenance of how this false consciousness becomes dominant and how it is sustained in a society. So he explained it through this concept. This is the title of his essay, Ideology and Ideological State Apparatus. And according to him, in order to exist, a social formation is required to essentially, continuously and perpetually reproduce that productive forces. So a social system to exist, they need to perpetually reproduce the productive forces, that is the labor power and means of production, and also they have to continuously reproduce these conditions of production and also maintain these relations of production. And how does this reproduction take place? First of all, the reproduction of labor power is ensured by this wage system in which pays a minimum amount to the workers so that they are only paid minimum amount, not more, not less, so that they appear to work day after day. And thereby it limit their vertical mobility. And this reproduction of the conditions of production and the reproduction of the relations of production happen through the state apparatus. State apparatus, which is controlled by capitalist ruling ideology in the context of a class struggle to repress, exploit and subjugate the ruled class. And there are two apparatus, mainly repressive state apparatus RSA and ideological state apparatus ISA. What is this repressive state apparatus RSA? The ruling class uses repressive state apparatus to dominate the working class. It includes government, courts, police and armed forces. And the ruling class uses this RSA to dominate the working class with timely interventions within politics in favor, which always favor the interest of the ruling class. And there they repress this subordinate social classes using either violent or non-violent forceful means, coercive means. So that is a repressive state apparatus. And what is ideological state apparatus? Ideological state apparatus, according to Althusser, use methods other than physical violence to achieve same objectives as RSA. Here we have educational institutions like schools, media outlets, churches, social and sports club and family. So these are the ideological state apparatus. As you see, these institutions are completely political, non-political and part of civil society rather than a formal part of the state, as you see in RSA. And what does this ISA do? ISA tries to disseminate ideologies that reinforce the control of a dominant class. And people tend to be co-opted by fear of social rejection or ostracization, ridicule and isolation. People tend to obey that. A social class cannot hold state power unless and until it simultaneously exercises hegemony over and through ISA, ideological state apparatus. But you should also understand this ISA also provide chances for class struggle as well. It is a site of class struggle. So here is the space where subordinate social classes find the means and occasions to express class struggle politically, and in so they counter this dominant class. They either utilize this ideological contradictions inherent in ISA, or they organize these campaigns to take control of positions within the ISA. So this is basically the concept ideological state apparatus. So we come to the end of concepts related to Marxism. Hope it is clear. Thank you. Have a nice day.